Hi there. As we were discussing in the previous video, Colombia played an important, very important role in the SDGs. Let me tell you a bit about the background. Let's recap a bit. Okay, so the Sustainable Development Goals is the agenda that goes from 2015 till 2030. It includes 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 targets, and together with 230 indicators. The Sustainable Development Goals include the limitations that were found within the agenda of the Millennium Development Goals that were explained in the previous video. These SDGs are more wide and have more more depth than the Millennium Development Goals. They were collectively identified, designed, negotiated, and decided. And it has different aspects. It includes topics of poverty, economic development, in terms of environment, in terms of governance. So they were about the background, so they were important dates. So year 1999, it took place the World Economic Forum. In January 1999, Kofi Annan, the then Secretary General of the United Nations, proposed something that is called the Global Compact. That is it's an agreement by business, by big multinationals, in where they commit to the fact to contribute to the international development. And this international development, then at that moment it was decided, since the definition of sustainable development, that it goes back even since the decade of the 1950s, and it got an evolution in the 60s, 70s. But then in 1999, it was decided, and it was clearly identified, that if business or if the private sector didn't contribute directly to the international agenda of development, it was not just possible to meet the objectives that they were found or they were decided as the Millennium Development Goals. So this invitation that it was at the World Economic Forum in Davos by Kofi Annan immediately was very well taken, and it took the entire year 1999 until July 2000, where the 9 principles of the United Nations Global Compact were proposed. These UN Global Compact had the first part is on relations to human rights, then to labor rights, and then to the protection of the environment. It was only in the year 2004 then it was added the principle of anti-corruption, that is the principle number 10. So altogether the Global Compact has 10 principles associated in the areas of human rights, labor rights, environmental protection, or environment, and anti-corruption. In June 2012, it took place in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, a conference called Rio Plus 20. It's called Rio Plus 20 because it was a meeting in 1992 that is called the Summit of Earth. This meeting in 2012, it was 20 years after 1992. That's why it's called Rio Plus 20. And the conference in Rio, it was called The Future We Want. In this year, it was all countries needed to provide, or they were discussing about the progress that they have made in relation with the Millennium Development Goals. And in that conference, it was a lady, official representative of the government of Colombia, from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, from the Director Office of Environmental, Social, and Economic Affairs. Her name is Paula Caballero. And Paula Caballero was the official delegate of Colombia in that meeting. And it was a meeting, and then she raised her hand and said, well, the agenda of the Millennium Development Goals is going to be over. We are going to be very close to year 2015, and what is going to happen after that? So she said, definitely we need an agenda we need something that is more sustainable, something that takes us together till year 2030. And we need an agenda that involves everyone, every country, not only developing nations or poor nations, but also we need an agenda in where everyone, every actor can participate. That takes individuals and they take all countries, and basically in where we don't want to leave anyone behind. So those more or less were the wording used by Paula Caballero, and so that one is why she is called the mother of the SDGs, and she is Colombia, and that one was why technically the SDGs were formulated by Colombia. At that moment, the director of the Environmental, Social, and Economic Affairs of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it was Patty Londoño. So it was a coordinator action. I'm very glad that it was on behalf of Colombia, and it was two ladies who took this lead. Together also, like remember we were in 2012, well in September 2010 it was a high-level summit on the Millennium Development Goals that was giving us some lights in terms of what it was going to be accomplished, where there were the limitations of the Millennium Development Goals, what should be the continuity. Then in June 2012 we have the Future We Want in Rio de Janeiro. And in December 2014, it was a synthesis report called The Road to Dignity 2030. Immediately after Rio in 2012, it was created a high-level commission for finding global participation. So over 5,000 organizations from business, civil society, governments at the different levels. And the civil society participation, it was both by individuals, movements, organizations. So it was really, really wide participation. It was a democratic process. So that one is, we are going to leave here just for, something that I forgot to say. As Colombia had these leaderships and participated in the high-level commission, that one is why we even could include the SDGs, and were launched in September 2015. Colombia could even include the SDGs in the National Development Plan that started in 2014. So in the National Development Plan 2014-2018, they were included Sustainable Development Goals, and in the plan 2018 to 2022, the government of President Ivan Duque, it included a really high proportion of SDGs, and the entire government plan, that is the National Development Plan, is totally aligned and connected with the SDGs. And if we take at the local level the case of cities such as Medellin, not only the current mayor, Daniel Quintero, but the previous mayor, Federico Gutierrez, make sure that everything that has to do with the local development plan, it was really had a strong connection with the SDG agenda. Okay, I'm going to leave you here because it's going to be very long, and I just don't want your connections crack, neither mine. So wait for the next one.